Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our talk hosted by the Market Photo Workshop on how to sustain a photography business. Today, we are joined by Janine Brown and Tiisetso Lesotho, who are both participants in the Market Photo Workshop's incubator program. With us in the panel as well is Aida Muluneh, Uche Okpa Iroha, and Stacie Graham. The panelists will all introduce themselves. I will start. I'm Kona Dlamini. I'm the manager for programs and projects at the Market Photo Workshop. Essentially, what I'm responsible for is the programs that we have internally, so our training programs, as well as the training programs that we do externally for different communities across mostly Johannesburg, but also with some reach across the continent. Welcome. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Tiisetso Lesotho. I completed the the 2017 photojournalism and documentary program at the Market Photo Workshop, and I participated in the 5th edition incubator program as an arts administrator, and I was mentored by Begin Dini. Thank you.
Yay! Hi guys, my name is Janine Brown and I run a company called Lemon Dry Productions, and we ensure programming for marginalized individuals, for people who maybe will not necessarily find their representation on TV. So we promote inclusivity, and with that being said, my role within this incubation was on content creation for the platform called Photoform with the Market Photo Workshop, and my mentor was Musa. Hi.
Aida, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Aida Muluneh. I'm a photographer. I also organize the Addis Foto Fest, and I do several activities around photography relating to education, policy changes, and also how we can use visual communication for change.
Thank you, Aida. Uche?
Hello, everyone. My name is Uche Okpa Iroha. I'm a photographer and independent curator, an art and culture producer. I'm the founder of the Nlele Institute in Lagos. The Nlele Institute is a unique organization that is dedicated to the training and development of young Nigerian artists from diverse backgrounds. One of our main objectives is to nurture and evolve the extraordinary talents that we have in our country through a structured curriculum that emphasizes on originality and flair. The Institute ultimately provides a platform that enables the artists, or I regard them photographers, to showcase their talents both in Nigeria and in overseas platforms. Thank you.
Stacie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacie Graham. I'm the founder of Color Balance Images, a digital media startup focused on delivering images and footage directly to media and advertising. We only work with local creative communities across the regions of Africa and the Middle East, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. We hope to do our part in reshaping narratives and reshaping those narratives led by the people who live there. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacie. Just some information about the incubator. So we're here because Tiisetso and Janine just completed our 5th cycle of incubator. The incubator program is sponsored by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. The idea behind it is to assist and support established photography practitioners in Africa. So we work across the country, they incubate from across the country. And this is to help them develop networks, grow their relationships in terms of business, and more than anything, it's for them to benefit as photographers, and usually our focus is on from marginalized and underrepresented areas. And the idea behind this is also for us to develop local economies in terms of access to resources and business opportunities. Having incubated develop a sense of urgency when it comes to the business photographers are interested in establishing. Quite often, in fact, my apologies, from time to time, I might do that.
Interesting.
Yeah, everyone is forewarned. But the point of the incubator is to also develop a sense of urgency for the young photographers when it comes to their business ideas, because we've often found that people will sit with ideas in their head and not actually do the in terms of actually starting and ensuring that they have a business that is feasible. So I would like to start with questions. I will start with our two incubates. Tiisetso. Oh, before I forget, so we do have a Q&A box. If you have questions, please do put them up on the Q&A box, and we will respond to them as we go through the talk. Tiisetso, your incubation was based on administration, was administrative based.
Yes.
And there's often a reluctance from photographers to learn the administrative part of the practice. The practice does have an administrative edge. What were the learnings that came from your process of incubation? What would you say is the experience that you took from it that you had not expected to have learned through the process of incubation?
Yeah, so what I learned from the incubator program, the lessons I took out of it is to always compare my codes. So instead of just when I want a code, instead of getting one person, I should maybe get 3 or 4 codes and compare to see which one is most efficient for me. And another one is always do my research, and communication skills were very important as well. Paper management, sending emails and filing was also very important, invoicing. And filing was actually the top of the list for me because it's easy to lose like documents during all the processes.
Okay, thank you. In this process, did you learn about how to make your client or whoever you're working with's life easier by ensuring that on your side, administratively, you've got all your ducks in a row?
Yeah, definitely. It's always about time, planning ahead, and time efficiency. So, because things can change during a shoot or during an event, and it's always what do you call it? It's always best to have to always plan ahead so that if anything breaks, because things can break, things will change, and it's important that you are able to think ahead and are able to fix things ahead of time.
Yeah.
To make it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Full risk, just in case. Always have a plan. C, D.
Oh, yeah. Always.
Janine, you came into the incubator with an existing business. How has the process of incubation helped you to solidify how you run your business and how you view what is possible within business?
So the first thing is I would love to give a big shout out, because all of this knowledge that I have acquired was through Robin Keat. She was also one of our speakers that came through. She was brilliant. I even ended up joining Creative Nomads after, because some of the stuff that she imparted was so necessary, but something that we leave in the peripheral of our minds. For example, having taxation, having an accountant, something we don't think is necessary, making sure that your books are up to date, making sure that you actually have a contingency plan for the month with targets, with goals, so that you can create a sustainable life for yourself, and then even for your staff, if that's where you're planning to expand. It's about creating a sustainable environment and creating a network. So I really enjoyed the fact that she also taught us on how to create relationship building skills and how to actually brand ourselves as not just as photographers, because we came in somehow feeling as photographers, but establishing a brand, establishing your voice, establishing your vision, your mission, your objectives for your company. And that was very important for me. And I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
Thank you, Janine. Just to follow on that, did you find that you now had to also consider that you have to have a willingness to learn?
Yes,
that,
yeah.
Yeah, for as long as you are in this business, you have to be on your feet. And the only way to make sure that you're able to think on your feet is by ensuring that you're always up to date with information.
Yeah. It's insane because I guess for some of us, you know, when coronavirus hit, hate to say it, as photographers, I guess you have to find a way then to shift your market and to change in a way to adapt. So it's this notion of always being dynamic and adaptable for the different markets is something that we all have to adapt, not even with just within the fields of the arts. It's about reaching your audience in a different way. So maybe you only predominantly provided photography. Now you're enabling graphic design because that was part of your course. So something like that has really been helped in assisting us with the activities that we do to become adaptable.
Thank you, Janine. I imagine that means your horizons were broad and very widely.
Yay! Guys, like some of the stuff I didn't expect. I didn't think that SARS was gonna hate me that much. I didn't think SARS is our taxation, guys, that's government. I didn't expect that because you went and you spent money on this and this and this is gonna happen. Because to us, we think it's 500 rands, it's mine. But no, Nana, 20% is not yours. So these are some of the things that, even like a code of ethics. There's ethics when dealing with people. You can't just put people in front of a camera. There's contractual agreements. And even if there's a contractual agreement, if they do not agree with their type of representation, they do have a right to withhold that. So it's dealing with that sort of thing. That is also involved that we don't think about. We just and we think it's over. Yeah.
Yeah, that model release form is really important, especially when you're considering showing people's images across whatever platforms or however. It's important to do that homework. Stacie, I'm on to you. In your experience working in guiding business strategies for startup companies, what have you seen as the gap in knowledge and experience when it comes to photography businesses?
Specifically with the photographers we work with, there feels often like a knowledge gap around what it means to create a career out of photography. It doesn't matter if I'm talking about our photographers in South Africa or in Ghana. I feel like there's not a lot of knowledge around how do I build a career from this. So it tends to be limited to, I become an exhibition artist, which is a very hard career to build if that's what you're relying on, or it's limited to more event photography, so weddings and things like that. And so I would say that people really need to understand first and foremost, you know, what is it? Where is my gift? Because there are a lot of people walking around with expensive equipment, but that doesn't make them a photographer. And so, you know, what is my gift? Where do I see my strengths? What do I bring to the table that others aren't doing yet on the one hand? And then how do I create a business out of that? So it's not enough to take good images, right? If I want to become a photojournalist, I have to get to know, you know, who are the editors I want to be working with? It's not about the overarching media house. Who are the photo editors? Who's making those decisions? How do I get on their radar? How do I just even ask for, like, you know, can we have a coffee? Can we have a 15-minute chat? What are you looking for? What do you care about? You know, you have to do your research. So whatever it is that a photographer decides they want to pursue, they need to understand that it's not something that is not about the equipment. It's not about how pretty an image you know, you're creating. It's about what is required of me from a business side to really push my business forward.
I think what I'm hearing you say is essentially that photographers have to start thinking about creating a trajectory in terms of their career from early on. And in addition to that, making sure that they set goals as they go along within the practice. And
Absolutely.
I think I would like to ask around, as someone who works with businesses, around falling, because it does happen that your great business idea does not work out. What would you advise young people who want to get into the business of photography to do in those instances when things don't work out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it can feel challenging, but what people have to understand is it doesn't matter if it's photography or something else. There's no straight line, right? And so when things don't go according to plan, or when a lot of rejections are coming in, we have to remember, and I say this also from personal experience, we have to remember not to take it personally. It's not personal. So every time something doesn't work out, there's an opportunity for us to ask the question, you know, what happened? What could have been done differently? Not better or worse, but what could have been done differently? And what can I take from this going forward? So that's one part of it. Don't take it personal. Always see it as a learning opportunity. But then the next step is also understanding a pivot. So sometimes maybe, you know, going into a situation, we had a very narrow idea of how it would work because we weren't fully informed. And that not lack of information is not always because we're not doing our work. It might be due to access barriers, right? And once we get started, then we recognize, okay, wait, you know, the original idea I had isn't going to work because that's not how this market works, or that's not how business works here. And so I need to be flexible enough to adapt to the new situation, pivot, and at the same time, finding this balance of not pivoting too soon or trying to accommodate people too quickly. Sometimes we do require longevity to get to where we're trying to go. And sometimes we have to take a left and a right rather than staying straight. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm hearing you. I think one more question I'd like to ask is around mentorships, and particularly business mentorships. I think a lot of photographers are often good at creating content, but business is not necessarily something that they'd be strong in. What would you advise for, in terms of mentorship, what should people look for? Is it important actually to get a mentor, particularly for the business aspect of your practice?
Yes, that's also a really great question. A lot of the photographers we work with tend to focus on mentorship from other photographers, which is also important. But they may be limiting what the discussion is with that mentor to, you know, photography. But if you've chosen a photographer, it doesn't have to be, but if you've chosen someone that you respect in their field, then don't, you know, think broader. This person has also had lefts and rights and pivots. This person has also wasted time and money because they didn't have their accounts in order, or they didn't incorporate correctly, or you know, they weren't backing up their files regularly, so they lost their external hard drive, and with it a lot of images, which is today we have no excuse when we have clouds everywhere. We can just upload it. So there's all these things that I think, again, talking about this access to information, there's a lot that we need to think about. So when I think about mentorship, I actually kind of moved away from mentorship into sponsorship. And there's a lot of great literature on that. I'd be happy to provide that after the call. But A sponsor is someone who's not only going to say, you know, this is how I did it, but they're also going to put your name forward when opportunities arise. But it has to be a partnership. So someone who's, you know, leveraging their access and privilege to put you forward has to know that you're going to step up, that you're reliable. So what are you offering them? What are you doing for them? It has to be mutually beneficial. It doesn't have to be tit for tat. It doesn't have to be, I do this for you and you do this for me. But it has to be, both people have to recognize we're getting something from this, we're learning something from this, and I can count on this person when I put them forward to, you know, to commit and to get the job done. I think it's actually really important.
Thank you, Stacie. I think what I'm hearing you say is that we within this field, people also have to be strategic in how they choose their mentors. But also another thing is that you don't have to have one mentor. You can have different mentors for different reasons, for different needs that you can learn from. Still speaking of, and also another thing that, like that you said, is equivalent to that saying that your network is your net worth. That ensuring that you, within your network, you have people who also put your name forward in when they come across instances where there might be opportunities for you. So that also requires you to be strategic and make sure that you're choosing people who would be open to do that for you, and vice versa.
And vice versa, right.
Yeah, it's a two-way street. Thank you for that, Stacie. Uche, while we're speaking still on networks, you work with collectives. You have experience working with collectives. Through working with Blackbox Photography Collective and the Invisible Borders Trans-African Photography Charity Group, what have been the challenges that both collectives have had to overcome from a business perspective?
Thank you, Stacie, for the question. Stacie, for giving us a very good narration of your ideas and your challenges running a business. I really enjoyed your talk. Kone, thank you too. I wanted to, before I go into your question, I wanted to highlight some of the, touch on a few things that Stacie mentioned, which we also feel, I think is a global thing. It happens to each one. Like when you want to start a business there must be some kind of research, that goes into that particular business. For example, in a photography, sector, you need to have a lot of information because it's very tricky. You can't just say because it's photography, then it's easy way to go. No, there's a lot that goes into it. So you need to do a lot of research and you need to do a lot of man management, especially when you're working with a team. And we've experienced that at the Ndele Institute and also in Blackbox and the Invisible Borders, which is a very key thing to tackle at the very beginning. For Blackbox, when we started, it wasn't really like a business platform. It was just an artistic platform for us to create initiatives, work on ideas and concepts and how to begin to develop them as artists. Because then we are just young boys and young girls trying to break into the sector then, and we didn't really have any kind of direction. We were just working haphazardly, and we didn't really have a business structure. It's even now that I'm now understanding how to put these stuff together because I've been focusing on the Ndele Institute project for since 2013. So I've learned quite a lot of things in the business angle. So, but the time when we started Blackbox, we didn't have this opportunity to kind of, think about a business structure. Look at the SMART. How do you, what is realizable, what is specific, what is achievable, and all those stuff. We didn't think about all this, but right now I think about all this stuff, you know. And the same thing for Invisible Borders. It was just an idea. When Emeka Okereke came up with this idea that, okay, let's travel across Africa and let us see Africa and report Africa by our own selves, you know, instead of waiting for the Occident to come into our space and begin to tell our own story, tell us our own stories. So we wanted to tell our own stories, but we had serious challenges. And, you know, one is funding. You know, when you're starting a business, for example, you need to have some kind of seed capital. We didn't have seed capital. I'm talking about Blackbox, Invisible Borders now. What we did at the beginning was we had to give up. You know, it's just like sacrificing. You know, the little you had. You know, Emeka Okereke gave up his flight ticket to Bamako. I think it was in 2009. He gave up his flight ticket to Bamako, and I did give up my own flight ticket to Bamako so that we can raise funds to, you know, or execute the project. And because we needed transportation to Bamako, and we didn't have any sponsorship. So what we did was just give up these privileges and also try to rally around some of our friends who were interested in going on the trip. But things started picking up from there, and you now had to do a lot of man management, personnel, and all that stuff, and trying to, you know, give a structure to the Invisible Borders. And at times, some of these projects fail when you don't have a structure. A structure means that, okay, when the idea or the person who is the pivotal idea person, you know, the main person, when that person is not there, what happens to the overall business? These are the things that we didn't really consider at that beginning. But I am glad now that all these things are taking shape. And that was our major challenge, you know, for the Black Box and for Invisible Borders. You know, the Black Box was just a group of young people, you know, with the camera, like Stacie said. Then we were just learning. You know, I didn't go to art school. My background is food engineering. I didn't study art in school. I only picked up art photography in 2005, and I learned on the streets, in Lagos, and nobody taught me. I had mentors like Akimbade who were there, you know, guiding me, and I was making my mistakes. Like Stacie said, you have your left and your right, and now trying to center yourself. You know, all these things happen, but at times it's good. At times it's good that these things happen because you learn from experience, you know. But what we are doing now, like for example, what we are doing now at the Ndlela Institute, it's all encompassing. It's all encompassing. Based on my experience, I'm looking back, I said, okay, I don't want this thing to continue happening to the young ones in front of us, you know, to the next generation. What do we do? If we failed, or if we succeeded with the Black Box, and if we fail or succeeded with the Invisible Borders, okay, we shouldn't continue failing, or we shouldn't continue teetering, you know, making mistakes here and there. We should find a structure that is workable. So that's what I've been doing since 2013 when I came back from Amsterdam, where I did my 2-year residency at the Rice Academy. And I've done quite a lot of training, you know, some of them very didactic, some of them, I took courses. At some point we were in Joburg when we started the CLPA, we had our first trainers meeting, business meeting and all that stuff. And since that time, I've been trying to develop myself and also my team on how to run a photography business. It's not just about events and weddings and all that stuff. For me personally, I don't do that. I've never shot a wedding event. I've never shot an event. So I focus more on art. And I'm thinking, how do we begin to develop, you know, programs in photography that are viable, even if it's a collective or it's a platform like the Ndlela Institute, or a collective like Blackbox. How do we begin to, you know, structure them in such a manner that, okay, when A fails, how does B succeed? How does B see, how do they succeed? So you need to create a format and become an example, yeah, and also provide some kind of mentorship. You know, mentorship is not just about gathering a few people and talking about, okay, this is my experience, or this is how I succeed. No, there are so many things that go into finances, business planning, writing, structuring. A lot goes into it. So even wellness, because for example, at the Ndlela Institute, the curriculum we're building now, it's all encompassing. It even includes failure. because failure is, yeah, it includes failure and wellness. And when you look at the industry, especially when it comes to artists, you know, how do we begin to check the issues of like, you know, mental issues, depression, and all those stuff? If you are not in a very good mental state, you cannot run a business. You cannot run a business. Talk less when it's photography, when you need a lot of thinking, a lot of ideas, putting them together on other stuff. So we need to, you know, look at one, business planning, first that idea, business planning and team. Then you look at finances, because you need a very good financial plan and structure. How do you plan? Most of the times when I engage some of my colleagues or some of my students or mentees, I always tell them, what is your 5-year plan? Even if you're working on your own, or you're working in a team, what is your 5-year plan? What do you want to be in the future? And that comes, the issue of relevance comes in. You know, you don't create work because you just want to create work based around aesthetics. You need to create work because they are relevant. So this is where value comes in. So in business, you have to add value, you know, and this is something you have to start right from the beginning. If you don't have a value system, it's very possible that you will derail. Even as an individual, if you don't have a value system, you will derail until you begin to inculcate value systems into your business. So with photography, it can also be done, you know, because we are reporting the way society is run. So we're also checking the values of the society, you know, the societal values, and we are reporting them. And you know how photography is. It's like the Greek goddess Janus that has eyes all over. You can see all over. You know, you can see both the negative and the positive. You can also, you know, through the aid of digital platforms like the cameras and the DSLRs and all the softwares, you can manipulate things outside of outside the reality. So in business development, you have to consider all these things as a photographer. You know, which angle do I need to choose? Do I need to belong in a collective? What are the values of the collective? Does this collective, you know, have a structure that can sustain me, or as an individual, as an artist, or a photographer over a long period of time? What are the values I, as an individual, add to this collective to grow and begin to network? Because networking is very important. If you don't network, you cannot really have a voice. Yeah. And another interesting thing that I want to mention, you know, is positioning. You know, positioning. And I think this was one of our major issues in the beginning, because we are not rightly positioned in terms of Blackbox. We are not rightly positioned because maybe we are young and we are very inexperienced, you know, and we are not rightly positioned. And it's just now that I'm, you know, just past few years that I'm understanding it, because of my contacts, my networks, and the kind of trainings I've had. A collective must be well positioned. One, and they must have a very good value system or structure to build network. It's not just, it's not all about money initially. It's all about producing content, adding value. When you are able to address these two vital issues, then the funding comes, because with that value you're addressing and the content and your position, you can now begin to attract some very fundamental funding, you know. And individually, as members of a collective, how you can, you know, beat certain challenges is that you need to develop individual positions. For example, Uche Okpa Iroha is first, well, I call myself now a visual artist because I started off as a photographer. So I've been able to build to a position where I don't regard myself as a photographer anymore. I see myself as a visual artist. So I can work in different forms. Photography, I learned painting didactically in Rice Academy. Nobody taught me. I didn't go to art school for that. I just learned by association. So I paint, I do video. So I've developed positions in these areas. I've developed myself in these areas. Then I've also developed myself in the areas of writing and also public speaking and all that stuff. So a collective or a platform, photography platform can develop themselves in these areas where, okay, we are not just a collective that we just go around town making photos, you know, and doing all that stuff. You need to create a position for your platform where you begin to address issues. Go to, maybe if you are 4 or 5 in a collective, how do you harness the individual assets of that collective, their passions? Because when you don't have passion, you can't really, even if you have skills or talents, you can't really go far. You know, passion is like a fire, you know, that adds fuel to whatever you're doing. So what are the individual, you know, skills, talents, and passion? Because not all individuals in a collective are on this, operate on the same, it's okay, on the same level. So you need to harness this, you know, these gifts and put them together and begin to build, you know, a holistic platform, a holistic collective. Because I subscribe to collective because it was the collective that, you know, basically brought me to where I am today. You know, it was through the Blackbox, Invisible Borders, you know, that, you know, basically made Uche Okpa Iroha who he is today. So because I learned from a lot of people, most of the guys then, you know, were way ahead of me. But I put myself in, what I call it, in a student position, you know, in a learning position. Say, okay, this is a food engineer just coming in, but fell in love with photography. And I wanted to learn. Not that I wanted to learn fast, but I put myself in a position that, okay, let me draw from these guys around me and begin to find myself, find my trajectory, look up my visual pathway, you know, and begin to learn and begin to help others. And that's how I ended up with the idea of setting up the Muluneh Institute, which actually came into full view when I returned back in 2013 and began to, you know, address, okay, the gaps, you know, what are the gaps, you know, because what collectives do try to bridge gaps. You know, they are like pockets of schools. Yeah, they are like, they are very informal. It's just like the market photo workshop, the Muluneh Institute, what Aida has in Addis. These are pockets of schools and they are very informal. So within these pockets of schools, like you have your incubator program. Yeah, if you have like 4 or 5 people out of 10 that participate in that program, you see at the end of the day, you have an informal tangent that pull, not that they pull out, but because of what they've been taught, they find synergy amongst themselves and begin to find another structure, to begin to develop another structure where they now begin to mentor other people. So I subscribe to that. I like proliferation of platforms. You know, when you have pockets of collectives that are well structured, that have content, you know, that operate in a certain value structure, then you now begin to begin to address challenges. Back in those days, we are not very digital like we are today. Some of the things that we have now, we didn't have them back in those days. I want to say another challenge was the communication and man management. You know, human man management. You know, when you have artists, you know, artists operate in a certain brand level. You know, they are most intellectuals, very, very opinionated and all that stuff. You need to find ways to manage people. You know, you need to have, you can, people can take, you can take training in management, you know, managing people, human resource, you know, management. I've done that in the past, during this COVID, I've taken quite a lot of courses in management, in business development, in client services, customer services, human resource. I've done quite a lot of trainings, you know, online. And I think that's one of the positives I took from this COVID lockdown, where I've tried to build myself, develop myself because of what I want to do within the Muluneh Institute structure, and also what I want to do outside of that structure. Because if I don't do it, you know, and when you step out of that particular structure so that other people run things, we collapse. So it's very important that you get people involved. You know, ask people, I remember, ask people, ask your students, participants, team, outside of the working structure about family. It's very important. You need to work with their psyche, the psychology. I remember back in the days at the rights, some of the advisors would come into my studio. They don't even discuss photography. They discuss they discuss your wellness, your well-being. They discuss your wellness.
A big part of photography is about the people relations.
People relations. Very nice. People
Thank you very much for that.
That's very important.
You've said a mouthful, but I think the big thing that I'm taking away from this is, from your experience, particularly with the two collectives that we're part of, is learning to move a passion project, which is about doing the things that you enjoy doing, to it becoming a source for financial gain.
Yes.
So, and I would think that maybe the best way to put this is that for people who want to go into business, for them to start considering that early on, even before they start doing the fun work, which artists and creatives enjoy doing, but starting with the hard work of mapping out a career trajectory and ensuring that your paperwork is in place, ensuring that you have a sense of where you want to go with what you're creating, so that it's not a hobby.
It's not a hobby.
This is not about the hobby. Thank you very much for that, Uche.
Thank you, Kona.
Aida, on to you. I'd like to know, in terms of setting up a photo festival over the last decade, what has been your experience in trying to scale up over the 10 years?
Hi, thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi, Uche. No, it's been a long journey as far as scaling up. I think a lot of people assume that doing a festival is an easy thing, especially when photographers come to Addis Ababa and realize the big nightmare that we go through. But the key thing that has been for me is, and one thing I realized was that, funding is quite challenging in Ethiopia. And if you look at, I think, across certain parts of Africa in relation to whether you're getting, corporate funding or, these foreign culture institution funding, these all play a part in also, defining what kind of a festival you're going to be. So for me, when I set up the Addis Foto Fest, we're not an NGO, we're actually a company, so we're a PLC, which makes us, I think, unique in Africa. The biggest conversation for me was, how can we develop a social enterprise? Because I do believe that there's a way to do business and also give back to your society, community, and so forth. So in my approach of organizing the Addis Foto Fest was really led by understanding that it wasn't just about teaching photographers, that I had to teach my own community what photography is as well, which includes the government, which includes all the stakeholders. So in building that relationship, my approach is quite different, I think, in the sense that I'm in business, but I'm in art, but I'm also in advocacy. And through that, it's, I think, having a clear understanding of what is our objective as a festival. So for example, our festival is in December. I remember when I first started in 2010, one European funder was saying, well, the expat community will not be here in December, and this might be problematic. And for me, it was like, I really don't care about the expat because my audience is the Ethiopian community. This is the exact audience that I'm trying to teach. So that's irrelevant, So if you want to be with me and, change this conversation of photography in my country, then you have to understand that this is for my people first and foremost. And then through the trickling effect of that, it was really, I didn't want to do an African festival. I wanted to do an international festival because I believe in the global world that we exist in. As Africans, we are everywhere, but we don't use this to our advantage. So when organizing, just to give you numbers, the last edition, I think we had like 156 photographers from about 63 countries. So it's quite large in that sense. So, and this is only possible because I think that it's a rarity, whether you go to Arles, whether you go to Contact, any festival that you go to around the world, it's rare that there's enough diversity where, for example, a Nigerian photographer is meeting a photographer from Mexico, or, these very random gatherings. So one of the biggest philosophy for me is that I'm not building a festival. I'm actually, in a sense, building a tribe, a global tribe, in that we are meeting and we're having discussions and creating networks. And so through that, over time, building these partnerships was quite important. My first step was building a partnership with my own government, because I do believe that the government needs to understand the challenges that we face, whether they want to hear it or not. I think I might be the most annoying person to the government, but they need to hear it. And also to really understand that we are in a visual world. We are in a world where through an image, perceptions and perspectives are formed. So we need the investment, not of only these foreign cultural institutions, but there needs to be accountability from our government. There needs to be investment from our own business people, our own institutions. And these are the challenges that we face. And this is why, I've known Uche for quite some time. We're in it because we have a sense of urgency about it. We can be comfortably doing our artwork, chilling out wherever, doing whatever that we want to do. But as Africans, and having seen also how the global perspective is when it comes to the image of Black people in general, is that it is something that we have to engage and build networks globally, because that is the job that we have. So for me, for the Addis Foto Fest was really a way to promote Ethiopia. It was a way to reshift the imagination of those who think they know Ethiopia, which most people don't unless you come to my country. And it was also an opportunity for foreign photographers. When photographers come to your country, they're going to take photos. And guess what? They take those photos back to their country and then exhibit it there. And then they're going to show people what is Ethiopia all about. So this is how I imagine, the festival running. And overall, I don't come from money or power or what have you. I'm just a simple person that worked my way through this. So by me doing the Addis Foto Fest, it was really a way to encourage other photographers in other parts of the continent to understand that, you can make things happen, but it requires a specific dedication. But you have to have that vision, not just for the short term, but also for the long term.
Thank you very much, Aida. A follow-up question to that for me is on, you said that your the photo festival is in December. How have you found ways of diversifying income streams within the field?
I mean, for Ethiopia, it's virtually impossible to create any kind of market. So for example, if we, the main goal is to break even. This is the main goal. Some years we can break even, some years we cannot, but the show must go on, because there's something far greater than just a financial. It's just a matter of understanding, we're ahead of the market right now. So we're building a market that we're trying to get people to come along with us. But for me, the diversification component, and I think right now with the current state of what's happening around the world, this is really the opportunity for Africa to engage in technology, So these virtual exhibitions, virtual platforms, this is such an important component. And I cannot emphasize it anymore, even for African governments. Like right now, without communication, without networking, without technology, we're not gonna get anywhere with this. So right now, what we're looking at is how do we make this into a virtual format? Because for my end, for my personal work, most of my stuff is very virtual and fluid. So right now, it's like we need to take this kind of activation into a virtual form. But we've also started touring sections of the festival. So for example, there's a big show that's in Sharjah, at the Sharjah Museum through the Africa Institute, which is, I think, I believe it might be the first installation of photographers from Africa in the Middle East. So the first and the largest installation. So these kind of opportunities come through my own work, but I try to now take the Addis Foto Fest to the same market that I exist in, which is beyond Addis Ababa.
Thank you, Aida. I think just one last question. A photo festival is not something that's easy to put together. So I'm wondering, how did you work on reaching a point where where you were able to ensure that, or you were convinced that this is a viable idea, that it was something feasible to last for it? Well, it's been 10 years now. Can you take us through that?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. My lights from time to time.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what you were doing. I thought you were waiting for us to not talk so much.
Merchants link the lights.
No, I mean, we call internally, we call it the beautiful nightmare, because truly, you know, it requires intensive passion to continue with it, and it's quite a painful process. But there's a need for it, and it's really, you know, sometimes, and this is the thing about 20-year-olds that I realize, is that, first of all, my advice is, and I've said this in many conversations, if you want to be famous and rich, do not be a photographer. Find some other line of work, you know what I mean? So that's the first step. The second step for me at the end of the day is that nothing easy, you know, anything easy is not necessarily something good. So things take time. So we're in a generation of like this quick thing. We're in a generation of 20-year-olds who want to be successful quickly, or think that based on how many likes, that means you've arrived, which is never necessarily the truth, you know? So in that sense, it took a long time to get the Addis Foto Fest to this point, but it required persistence. This is the key thing. And it also required that everybody had to buy in to the festival, meaning that if you come to Addis Ababa, I remember like one hanging, you know, it took us 44 hours straight of hanging a show, which is not easy. And it's not easy to rally up everyone, the community, to understand the urgency and the importance of why we're doing this event. So ultimately, yes, of course. I mean, I'm a business person. I want to get to a point that we're able to, you know, at least be able to support our own system within the system. But at the same time, the driving force, and this is the same thing for photographers, you know, if you're in photography because you want to make money, that's the wrong passion. You know, you have to engage in whatever that you do with a specific conviction of what is your contribution to this world, and what is its contribution to change that you want to implement. So the festival, this is how I process it from my end, as far as when you talk about growth and where we're going into the future.
Thank you, Aida. That was beautiful and inspiring. Thank you. We have 7 more minutes to go before we're done. I don't know where the time went. Tiisetso and Janine, do you perhaps have questions for the other panelists in terms of, based on your experience so far in your young businesses?
I do have a question. So you spoke about social enterprises. I'd like to also start one myself, well, which is, I'm not doing it right now. So my question is, who are the people, organizations that support or award funding for social enterprises that you know?
Is that for me?
For the panelists.
Or for everyone?
Yeah, for everyone.
Who would you like to answer first?
Maybe Aida, because she also spoke about what she just said was very interesting.
I mean, the first thing is that, you know, in anything that we do, it's always about numbers, you know, whether we want to admit it or not, everything's about money, and everything comes down to, does it make sense, like number-wise? So doing a forecast is such an important component, one. The other thing is that if you look in your countries, or even if you look online, you know, either you're looking for an angel investor, you know, so for example, the money that you need in order to grow your business is not going to be something as attractive for a real investor, meaning that the return. So for example, if you're running a company and you want, like, I don't know, $100,000 for investment. That return for that investor is not going to be really that much. It won't make that much of a difference. So it's a matter of finding different institutions and different ways of supporting your business. So for example, if you look at Open Society, so Open Society is looking for applications as it relates to, and before it was only based on NGOs. Now they've opened it up saying, okay, for businesses as well, we'll accept these applications, you know. Even when you look at, for example, Prince Claus, like my favorite fund is Prince Claus because it's one of those funds that is always very civil about it. They understand the challenges because every African country has its own different challenges financially as well, and also how you report to government and what have you. But the key thing is that as far as finding one platform, the only thing that I really have come across that I thought was interesting was this African Business Heroes that is funded by the Jacoma Foundation. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But they offer this, yeah, so they offer this platform and there's this nomination process as well. But I think it's also a site that offers resources in that sense. But to me, it's, you know, if you have your numbers, if you have your business plan, it's basically going to people and finding the actual investors to invest in what you're trying to do, you know, and that means that any investor is going to look at that right number, but it's also about finding the right investor, not just any random investor, you know.
Definitely.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So it's, and in the creative field, remember that most investment is in the performing arts and not in the visual arts. And this is one of the key challenges that we face often. So for example, if I was doing concert, I'll be a billionaire now because between all the, you know, all the beer companies and all the soda company, you know, they will invest in that event, but they don't realize it's the visual arts that actually transcends and really goes even further than the performing arts. They're only looking at the bankability of that one event as opposed to the trickling effect that happens through that.
Yeah.
So in your strategy, you first have to identify, you know, what are you offering? It's a very basic thing. What are you offering? How is that different from what other people have offered? And then if you're able to sort of get that response, then it's about doing your numbers and really trying to figure out how you will approach whatever it is. And I don't know, like, I mean, in Ethiopia, there's no loan system or anything like that. But I'd be curious to know, you know, in South Africa also, what kind of incentives, because I know there's incentives for the film industry. I don't know if that's across the board for all the creatives.
I will share, towards the end, I will share some business different business, government departments that assist businesses, especially for up and coming entrepreneurs. I will share that information.
You guys are lucky you have that. At least.
Thank you very much.
Janine, do you have a question?
I was writing notes throughout, so I think I have a scramble. I have a brain scatter here of the things that I thought that we could have spoken about. Something that Uche said that was like really pertinent to me was this notion of creating value. And this is something that I spoke about with like a part of some of my peers, is that we create value first and thereafter then it develops into monetization. It is the creation of like a value. And I want to ask Stacie, actually, within your organization and the body of works that you've worked with, what value do you think that you add to your network? And how can you say that translates to everyone else?
Could I just ask you to specify what you mean by network, the value that we add to the network?
So when you were speaking about value is, you were speaking about this notion of, sorry, I'm just going to switch over.
I just want to make sure I'm answering the question.
You were speaking about, especially what registered with me, myself and you, I think that you spoke about the types of representation of people, right, and the collectivity. So what value do you, I guess, provide for those people that are not necessarily represented? Because like Aida said, we're not doing it. I personally agree. I'm not doing it for other people. I'm doing it for my people. I care about us. So how does that translate with you?
Sure, that's a great question. So I get answered in a number of ways. I'll try to be really brief because we're at the end of time. On the one hand, first and foremost, I'm identifying businesses that are multinational global corporations but their growing populations are in the regions where we are. So I'll just take the continent of Africa, for example. I have enough clients who have said to me, you know, when we work with insert big name competitor that I won't hear, you know, when we work with them, they're trying to sell us that the visual, you know, the people in the visual are Africans, and we can clearly see that they're African American. So there's this notion that the skin doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter like the context, the clothes, the music. It's just, oh, everyone is dark skinned, so obviously we can just sell that to them. But that's not how it works. And there's a lot of great case studies of larger brands that have been very successful, such as SAB, because it was very targeted. The imagery that they used spoke to the people that they were targeting. And so I think often the consumer in the past has neglected their agency in the matter, but you can choose what you put your money in, right? So why would you want to buy something that is meant to be targeting you, but doesn't actually represent you?
Ooh.
So there's an agency that we have today because of technology where we can be pickier and consumers have bigger demands. And the brands and the marketing agencies that I work with, they understand that. And they also want to do better. They feel driven by the fact that the industry's, let's put it this way, the industry is ready for it. But they're still a bit complicit in the old ways of doing things because they say, well, we can't find the people. Do they exist? Where are these local creatives that you talk about? Where is this funnel that you mentioned? And so that's the value that we're bringing. We're trying to bring these two together, providing value to the local creative communities also because we do prioritize professional development. We're not only here to take. We want to invest in the professional development of the people that we work with. And on the other hand, we provide value to these brands to do better and connect with the communities and the creatives who can make their branding better. So, you know, we're trying to bridge those gaps.
We have some questions from the Q&A box. The first question, which is to all panelists, is from Gano Britain. They would like to know, with the COVID-19 impact, how will you position your business going forward? Maybe Uche, you'd like to go?
Yeah, thank you, James, for that question. You know, the COVID pandemic has posed so much problems. You know, we go with the terms new normal and everything, all sorts of things now, which for me personally, I don't like the term new normal, you know, because for art, you know, the art is going to be challenged, both in terms of funding, infrastructure, personnel, and every other thing that, you know, supports art. But as a platform in the Lila Institute, what we are actually doing now is we are trying to reorganize space. We are hopefully in a very short period of time, we are moving into a space, and we are looking forward, you know, in terms of, you know, curriculum, strategy, digitization, and all that stuff. And also, we are also looking at the students, the mentees, you know, in terms of wellness. You know, you need to, you know, rejig their mentality to be able to come back into that position again, where they begin to think that, okay, it's possible to create again. So it has to do first with the psychology, you know, and the emotion of the art, which is very important, because without, you know, stabilizing these emotions, you cannot really create anything. So that is the first key. So the first thing we want to do when everything returns back to normal is to do some kind of reorientation, you know, of what it means to create again, what it means to, you know, engage our society in a very critical way, and how we begin to adopt, you know, strategies, curriculum, coupled with the, what I call it, the science, you know, that comes with it, you know, with the social distancing and everything. But we need to find other strategies. You know, it's not just going to be like Aida said quite a lot, you know, which I wanted to, highlight, but we don't have time. There are so many things an organization in the art, for example, photography, can do. It's not just about training students or mentees in photography. There are other avenues. There are other, areas that a photographer, like she said, if you want to be rich or you don't need to be a photographer. You need to put your passion. Passion must be there. She said it's intensive passion. I call it aggressive passion. All we do is all about that intensive, aggressive passion. And that is the same thing we need to inculcate into the students and the mentees, and also the business structure. If you don't have that passion, I don't think no art or photography organization is going to survive if you don't have that passion. When you have that passion, then you'll be able to, re-strategize, and re-strategizing doesn't really take much. It's all about introducing more elements into your vision. Like for us, we are going into films, into films, and also trying to do what are other business ventures can we go into? Go into films, go into other things that support artists. So that is one key area. Instead of thinking about just the curriculum, the curriculum is there, but which other area can you look into?
I think, I'm hearing what you're saying, Uche. It's also about being pragmatic, seeing what works.
What works,
What works. Instead of just doing what you've always done. We have another question from our own Lekgetho Mapola. What he would like to know is, his question is, what are your thoughts on the creation of membership-based photography associations that become professional platforms for photographers from across the continent to access a community of practice, support new knowledge and sharing, as well as benchmarking?
Can I take that? Is it for me? Is it for me?
Analysts.
Okay, let me just say just one or two things. It's important that we begin to create indigenous platforms. Aida always mentions it, and which I like very much. It's important that we create indigenous platforms, to begin to direct our young ones, the emerging artists, the young photographers in the right direction, because you have to create synergy, amongst the trainers, amongst the participants, and amongst with funders. If you don't have, like what we've been saying this morning, if you don't have the values and the passion and the idea, you can't be able to create an association that is well-rounded, that also looks into community issues like, fighting exclusion, fighting other social injustices and other stuff. You need to create associations that highlight or touch on these issues within our society, because that's basically what we do. Like I mentioned earlier, what we do is to question the way society is run. So most of the associations that I think that should, come on board, like what for us at the Lele Institute, with this COVID thing and also what is going on around Africa and Nigeria, we are looking at, how do we begin to, look at issues of ethnic and tribal justice, and equity, and how do we begin to look at, through our work, the photographs of our participants, how do we begin to question these issues and draw out the government of the day to look at the ethical triads of equity, fairness, and justice? And how do we begin to, after all these things, how do we begin to rebuild? So these are the areas I think that, photography collectives or associations should look at. It's not just about developing new knowledge. New knowledge is good, because when you create work, you need to look at how you impact a sector, and introducing new elements into the system for circulation or information dissemination, which is very important, through books, through exhibitions and videos. This is very important. But what I'm saying is that we also need to address issues within our communities, within our society. And when we work in depth, we can be able to, address the issues of new knowledge. Like, for example, in Nigeria, there's this place that people normally go to photograph. It's very romanticized.
I will have to We are
Okay.
already a little bit over the time that was given to us. Our time has been extended up to 1:15, which is in
good.
5 minutes.
Okay.
Stacie and Aida, do you have anything to say about the Lekgeto's question on photography associations that are paid for that require paid membership? Okay, let me just reread the question again. What are your thoughts on creation of membership-based photography associations that becomes professional platforms for photographers from across the continent to access a community of practice, support, new knowledge sharing, and benchmarking? And go ahead,
Yeah.
Stacie.
No, go ahead.
Sure. I was going to let Ida speak on that. I think what I do know from my experience with our contributors is it can be very useful in building trust. There feels like there's a lot of mistrust for good reasons to a certain extent. People are very concerned about copyright and IP, and so I think building that type of membership-based association can be really useful so that people get to know each other. They can learn from each other, but the lack of trust among photographers in the same location is a really interesting and, for me, unexpected challenge that we've been faced with. So I think first, yes, it would be the short answer is yes. It could be really useful, and I think it would help in building trust, but also the knowledge share aspects would be really useful, as we were hearing before from the two wonderful panelists from the incubator. You know, learning these things around model release, as you know, is a huge issue for color balance images. These things that I often take for granted as common knowledge isn't common to everyone. And so there is an opportunity to build that knowledge base so that, what I like to say, people can work more efficiently and more effectively. So instead of working hard and glorifying like the busyness, that type of association might help people to work smarter and then to build differently.
Thank you, Stacie. Aida?
I think for the continent, there needs to be associations first in each of our countries, because each country has a different governmental policies or relationships. And to me, forming an association is not about building trust. It's more about advocating for our rights as Africans working in our countries, because I think it's a different reality between Western photographers and those of us that are in the continent, because we have different security issues that we have to be confronted with. And the only way to promote our rights is really by forming an association. And from my experience, what I've understood is that to really implement change for the photography industry in Africa, we have to have, as I mentioned earlier, that we need government accountability, meaning that our higher institutions, so for example, you know, inside the universities, in the art department, photography should be a strong field. And often, you know, I've traveled in different parts of the continent that have art schools, but when we look at photography, it's not something that's considered, it's not something that's supported quite well. So in that sense, forming an association is a way to lobby in order to, you know, if we're really talking about change, it's not about this surface, superficial stuff. I believe that education is the foundation to change for this. And through that, it's about also us understanding how we have to learn photography. You know, it's not, you know, some foreigner flying into, you know, our countries and showing us this and that. It's not that, because teaching, and I can tell you, I've taught many places, teaching photography in Africa and teaching photography in Europe, Middle East, and all these places, it's quite different. There's different contexts that we have to take into consideration. But for what we have right now in Africa is that, yes, photographers need to mobilize and form these associations and get organized, because that is the foundation of how it grows into other things. So it is quite a need for that.
Thank you, Aida. Our last question, it's from Cornelia Shetu for Janine. She would like to know, how are you keeping updated and ensuring that you are prepared to engage with the broader community in delivering effective and satisfactory service to clients?
Hectic. Let me just quickly digest that and look at that question again.
How are you keeping updated and ensuring that you are prepared to engage with the broader community?
I think like one of the things that Uche says is there's this notion of urgency and having your ears to the street. So as a photographer, you need to have your pulse on, or even a creative individual, so that your pulse on the street, your pulse on what's happening, because a lot of the time, by the time it gets shown on media, we already finished it long ago. And then it's on TV, and then it's on this, and it's something that we've discussed or something that we've experienced, and then it becomes a hype. So you need to be, I guess, ahead of that and knowing what may be a trend or a movement, rather. Let me not say a trend, a movement is more of a thing that you need to be aware of. And when you are aware of that movement, again, you will add a value to your client, because then they will see, okay, this is monetizable, because she's saying, okay, right now, if you've noticed in this country, everybody now is talking about gender-based violence. Now everybody's talking about it. But something behind it right now that I will see coming through is then queer activism is going to come through later on. So you need to make sure that you know what is at the back of the background, so that when it comes to the foreground, it shouldn't surprise you and then you are jumping on the train. You should have already implemented something for that, so that when, I guess, your clients do think, oh, we need a campaign on gender-based violence and on this and this and this, which is something that happened with me because it's in my business, my company profile, about talking about marginalized individuals and these things. And when all these things came about, they were like, hey, Janine, could you do something for me? And I was like, sure, because that is also integral to the type of organization that I am. So also, it also ties into what is your vision and your mission. Who do you want to serve? Is also like, who is your client? And the way that if you identify your client in your target market, you then also identify a way of targeting them, which is also important, because the way you target to youth is completely different to the way you're going to target your granny who's watching Days of Our Lives. It's just like two different things. Or so you just, I guess, you need to stay informed. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Janine. And thank you to everyone who's joined us, both our panelists as well as our audience members. Thank you very much. The last thing is just the shameless plug moment. Please, can everyone just give us a sense of what it is that you're doing, as well as your social media, what are they called? Social media handles, where people can actually get hold of you. Stacie, you can go.
Oh, sure. So you can find the work that I do at the same place everywhere on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's Color Balance M. So color with a U, balance IM. Color Balance Images, as I previously said, it's a digital media platform, and we're focused currently mostly on Africa and Asia, with the plan to expand to Latin America and the Caribbean, working with local creative communities to to directly link them to art buyers and editors.
Thank you, Stacie. Aida, I know you do a lot.
Sorry. Yeah, so everybody can find me on Aida Muluneh on Instagram and Facebook and all of that. And also for Addis Foto Fest and also DFA PLC. We're currently running some mentorship results from students that I mentored in Ethiopia and Cote d'Ivoire. And you can find that on Catchlight's link, and we'll be sharing the portfolio on our site as well as far as the results. And for those who are in West Africa, I'm running the second round of the masterclass in Abidjan at the Runway Foundation. So all that information you can find on Addis Foto Fest as well.
Thank you, Aida. Janine? You're muted, Janine.
Oh, sorry, I was just writing all those beautiful nuggets from everyone. My name again is Janine, and the company is Lemon Dry Productions. We are a production company, not just that operates in film, but we do create media, not only in photography, but in film and media, because we believe that one image, I guess, then can be replicated across a lot of media platforms. Find you? Oh, thank you. JRT_Brown on Instagram, and yeah, I guess on Facebook with my name and surname, but that's about it.
Tiisetso?
You can find me on Instagram at Tiisetso Lesotho. And currently I'm studying film and also doing a lot of research on the social enterprise I would like to start, which is, what do you call this? Doing books for, photographic books with young girls in my township.
Thank you, Tiisetso. Uche? You're muted.
Okay, thank you very much. You can find us, the Nlele Institute, on Instagram at the Nlele, that's the_Nlele. And on Facebook, you can go to our group page, the Nlele Institute. Just type it there, you see it. On Twitter, we are at TNIACP. What we are currently doing now is trying to build a very robust and holistic training structure that will make us very relevant in the coming years. And that's what we're doing at the moment with this new COVID reality. And we're trying to structure in such a way that when we get back, we'll be able to go full force with educational programs and all the other projects we've lined up to do. But at the moment, we're also engaging very much on mentoring young artists, young photographers. Thank you.
Thank you, Uche. Just a little bit more information for those in South Africa. Please check out the Department of Small Business Development. They work with the National Youth Development Agency. The National Youth Development Agency has a business management training program. This is all young South Africans. By young in South Africa, we're talking about people under 35. You're eligible to apply for this mentorship. We also have a small enterprise development agency, which also assists small businesses with finding ways of accessing funds. The NYDA, the NYDA also helps with business plans, helping young people with how to develop a business plan. And we also have the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, which helps SMMEs and co-ops. Thank you very much for everyone for joining us. This was a really great talk. It's a pity that the time just flew. There was so much to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kona. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Jamie. Bye, Stacie. Bye, Aida.
Bye, Uche.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.